Yeah, I know. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Baba Giridhare Hari Gopi Jana Prabhupada ki. Oh, glory to the assembled world. So we'll get right on the road here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Sarasating Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Okay, so Ete Varna Swadharmena Yajanti Swagurum Harim Shraddhayatma Visudatam Yajjata Saha Vrittipi Ete Varna Sva Dharmena Yajanti Swagurum Harim Shraddhatmas Visudatam Yajjata Saha Vrittibi Ete Varna Swadharmena Yajanti Swagurum Harim Shraddhatmas Visudatam Yajata Jata Vrittibi. Anyone else?
Ete Varna Swadharmena
Ete Varna Swadharmena
Yajanti Swagurum Harim Shraddhayatma Vishuddhyaktam Yajjata Sahavrittivi.
Ete Varna Swadharmena
Ete Varna Swadharmena
Yajanti Swagurum Harim
Yajanti Swagurum Harim
Shraddhayatma Vishuddhyaktam
Shraddhayatma Vishuddhyaktam
Yajjata Sahavrittivi.
Ete. All these.
All these.
I'm sorry if anybody else wants to.
That's fine.
Okay. Varna, orders of society. Sadharmena, by one's own occupational duties. Yashanti, worship. Svagurun, with the spiritual master. Parim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sadhaya, with faith and devotion. Atma, self. Vishuddhi Artam, for purifying. Yet, from whom? Jata, born. Saha, along with. Vritti, occupational duties. So the translation by Srila Prabhupada. All these different social divisions are born with their occupational duties and living conditions. Excuse me, I read that incorrectly. All these different social divisions are born with their occupational duties and living conditions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, for unconditional life and self-realization, one has to worship the Supreme Lord under the direction of the spiritual master. So please repeat. All these different social divisions are born with their occupational duties and living conditions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, for unconditional life and self-realization, one has to worship the Supreme Lord under the direction of the spiritual master. So the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Since they are born from different parts of the body of the Supreme Lord in His gigantic form, all living entities in all parts of the entire universe are supposed to be eternal servitors of the Supreme Body. Every part of our own body, such as the mouth, hands, thighs, and legs, is meant to render service to the whole. That is their constitutional position. In subhuman life, the living entities are not conscious of their constitutional position, but in the human form of life, they are supposed to know this through the system of the Varnas, the social orders. As above mentioned, the Brahmana is the spiritual master of all the orders of society, and thus Brahminical culture, culminating in the transcendental service of the Lord, is the basic principle for purifying the soul. In conditioned life, the soul is under the impression that he can become the Lord of the universe. And the last point of his misconception is to think oneself the supreme. The foolish conditioned soul does not take into account that the supreme cannot be conditioned by Maya or illusion. If the supreme were to become conditioned by illusion, where would be his supremacy? Yeah, because in this case, Maya or illusion would be the supreme. Therefore, because the living entities are conditioned, they cannot be the supreme. The actual position of the conditioned soul is explained in this verse, semicolon, where is it called? All the conditioned souls are impure due to contact with the material energy in three modes of nature. All the conditioned souls are impure due to contact with material energy in three modes of nature. Therefore, it is necessary that they purify themselves under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, who not only is a Brahmana by qualification, but must also be a Vaishnava. The only self-purifying process mentioned herein is to worship the Lord under the recognized method, under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. That is the natural way of purification, and no other method is recommended as bona fide. The other methods of purification may be helpful to come to this stage of life, but ultimately one has to come to this last point before he attains actual perfection. Bhagavad Gita 7:19 confirms this truth as follows: Bahunam jamanamante gyanavam mam papajante vasudev savaniti mahatma sudurlabha. So I'd like to actually read the translation. I don't have it to memory, I just could say it, the essence of it. I'd rather hear the whole thing. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. And it's interesting that in the purport, I was looking at this yesterday, is that the living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. Prabhupada's saying that we're talking about not just getting to the point of becoming a devotee, that you're already practicing devotional service and performing transcendental rituals for many births. And then you finally, it clicks Vasudev Sarvamiti. It's purification, because there's a verse right before this, I think it's the fourth, Daivi Esha Gunamayi. Daivi Esha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Durataya, Mam Eva Ye Papajante, Mayam Etam Tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material existence, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So this is not an easy process. We've declared war against the material energy, and she's coming at us with everything. Haridas Thakur actually initiated Durga. So in my understanding is that she was the second woman to come and test him. And she was so impressed with his conviction and his chanting, Namacharya, she surrendered to him. But most of us, she'll come, and in so many ways, she or he, depending on your particular embodiment, Maya comes at you and with all kinds of things. It may not even be in terms of illicit sex, or it may become, it says the last snare is that you think you can become God, all powerful. You may want to become the richest, you may become the most knowledgeable, the strongest, the most influential. In so many different ways, Maya comes at us. And it's a constant struggle to fight back, like in the garden. You were talking with the weeds keep coming back. Well, in our hearts, as we're chanting, weeds are growing along with it. I remember after Katrina, I just thought of this. After Katrina, I was living in town, and I had just cut down about 30 trees on my property. And I had a house and a second lot. And so then there was a lot of big trees that I hadn't gotten to yet. And actually 3 of them fell like this, together in concert, so to speak. And they were resting on I believe it was an oak tree. And they were resting on that, and right below that was my kitchen. But I had put Nrsingadev oil from Mayapur on all the trees, and I kept saying, please pass over, please pass over. And then I had the epiphany that that's what the Jews were thinking about, having the sin pass over, having the reaction pass over. But those went, and I saw the roots, and these roots are like so entangled, and each root is carrying with it big chunks of mud, of dirt. It's like it's encased in mud, which you could say that's material desires. And like the example I told the other day about Pankanjani was one of the pujaris, one of the Matajis, was making the Tulsi garland, which took her 3.5 hours every day. And it's, very long, with the manjaris, and it takes his whole body. And so, as a reward, one day he gave her one of the false nails. And she drilled a little hole in it and was wearing it around her chest on a gold chain. And then one night, Nrsimhadev came to her, and he reached inside of her chest, and he grabs, he comes out and he's holding, you see this? It was a black, oozy substance. Did you see this? This is lust. And there's a lot more of this, where this came from. What would you like me to do with it?
Throw it away.
Yeah, I was wondering what I'd say. I don't know what to say, because where are you going to throw it? Wherever you throw it, they're going to be contaminated by it. I don't know, just clean me out. Just clean me out. But that's the thing, is we can't, there's an example of this one Prabhupada disciple. I don't want to give his name, but he was on a morning walk with Prabhupada. And at the time, he was doing a lot of work with these professors. I forget their name, Judah and Dema. One of them had written a very nice book about the Hare Krishna movement. And they were having some discussion, and the disciple said, "Oh, you mean like da-da-da?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes. I've been trying to teach you this for 100 lifetimes, and you still don't understand." And he may not have said it quite like intensely. He said, "Yes. I've been trying to teach you for 100 lifetimes, and you still don't understand." So then after that, everybody came up, all the other godbrothers came up to him and said, "Wow, Prabhu, you've been with Prabhupada for 100 lifetimes." And he said, "Yeah, but don't you understand? I haven't understood it." And he didn't understand this one because I saw him right before he died. And he had left for, he became a Buddhist. I couldn't figure that one out. Yeah, but I didn't want to go there. I mean, it's just... So I don't want to be one of those people. I want to get out. I mean, if I have to come back to help, I pray that wherever I go in my next life, that I do not forget Srila Prabhupada. I don't forget what he has taught me. I don't forget the holy names, and that I may have the opportunity to be engaged in his service. That is, my ultimate dream. Whatever else after that, it's cream. But, so if I have to come back, at least let me come back. I heard Pankaj Jangri say, interestingly enough, before he actually, a couple of years before, I've been watching a lot of things now on YouTube about, where they had a birthday ceremony for him and his brother in 2018 that there was thousands of people, devotees. The entire length of the Panchatattva hall was 3 or 4 double lines of people sitting taking prasadam outside the doors. It went on and on and on. There was huge lines, and all of them were there to glorify their service to Srila Prabhupada and to Radhamadeva and Panchatattva. They were such incredible examples of what I would like to be, just in the background, not making some display, just trying to do the needful steadily without any interruption, unconditional, unmotivated, ahaituki apatiyata. That is the standard. That is what we should, and what it says in this purport, that unconditional love, this unconditional service. I don't care what the condition is. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I couldn't sleep all night, so I can't come. Or whatever the situation is. Unconditional. And, I know as soon as I say this, I'll be tested. It happens all the time. But, and I forget where I was going with this, but a friend of mine, one of my godbrothers, just happened to email me. For some reason, I know why he did it, and it has nothing to do with this class, but he emailed me a lecture that Prabhupada gave in 1968 in Montreal on the 7th canto, 6th chapter, verses 6 through 12. It's, if you're familiar, it's Prahlad Maharaj talking to his classroom friends. I don't remember the Sanskrit or the exact. I mean, if you want, I can read it. But the point is that those, it's basically he's saying that now that we're young, we should take advantage of this moment. We should see where we are. I mean, how many times in your life, if you look back, if you had had the clarity in that moment to understand just what is being presented to you, to understand what kind of grace I was getting, and where was my head? Where was it, my heart? It was up in the cloud somewhere. I wasn't there. I didn't. And then late, you look back and you go, "Oh, what a chance! I let it go by." But we can't let them go. Now that we know those moments are coming, every day we get a chance to come and see and associate with the deities and the devotees. Is another opportunity for getting closer and closer to that ultimate trip, which we're all going to take. There is no death. We just leave and go somewhere else. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying like this, and in this purport he says, well, first of all, half of your life is already wasted, because if you take 100 years, half of your life is going to be spent in sleeping. And I was thinking about Lord Brahma. Does he actually sleep the entire time? I mean, I don't sleep. I mean, now I don't, but it's rare that I would sleep 12 hours. I mean, sometimes I only sleep 2 hours and then can't sleep. When you get older, that happens. So anyway, though, in the Bhagavatam, Prahlad's saying you sleep half of your life. So that's half of your the emphasis is being put on the human form of life. How rare it is to get the human form of life. And with this intelligence, this ability to inquire into who am I, where did I come from, and where am I going? In this lecture, Prabhupada says there's 3 things you should know. What I am, who is God, and what is my service to Him. And Prabhupada has given us all of that. He told us who we are. We're not these bodies, we're spirit souls, part and parcels of the whole. And this verse is actually the culmination that Maitreya, in that first portion there of the universal form, is sort of the culmination. And he's saying now that we have the universal form set up with all the demigods there to help assist in the running of the universe, our role is now we must find it, whatever varna or ashram we're in, or both, that's in that same area of the Bhagavad Gita, that we find who we are, but then ultimately, I believe it said, not just a Brahmin, but you're a Vaishnava. So whatever situation you're in is to develop a service attitude. What is our relationship with God and the spiritual master? It is to be a servant of the servant, that to develop the service attitude. Like I always found it very interesting that the Prithu Maharaj story, at the end of the story, there's like 5 or 6 verses of benedictions. If you read this story and hear it with enthusiasm, if you're a Brahmin, you get these things. And if you're a Kshatriya, you get that. If you're a Vaishya, you get all this. If you're a Sudra, you become a perfect devotee, a pure devotee. So being a Sudra has an advantage.
Yeah.
Just like the wives of the Brahmins. Think about it. Their husbands were expert in all the Vedic rituals, but when the cowherd boys came on behalf of Krishna, he's a Vaishya. What are you doing? We're Brahmins. We come to the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas give charity to us. We don't give charity to you. When you see in those external positions, where then Krishna Balaram told the cowherd boys, just go back to their wives. They'll give. because they were not so proud, they were not so caught up in, their rituals and their knowledge and the sense of importance that went along with being a Brahmin. And they just saw these beautiful boys, especially Krishna and Balaram, and they just unconditionally, they didn't care about the reaction from their husbands. They gave them foodstuffs to give to Krishna and his friends. That is the mood, the unconditional, unmotivated, not what's in it for me. What's in it for me? Like I read somewhere just recently, I've been trying to rack my brain where I read it. It was after some big yajna. I think it might have something to do with Dasarath. And it was talking about all the rewards that everybody at the yajna was getting. And the Brahmins, what they got was internal realizations, more knowledge. Internally, Krishna reciprocated by giving them more realization of the absolute truth. And they were very, very, satisfied with that. They were very enthused by that. So, and along these lines then, and I just wanted to make this point, that, because in this particular class that Prabhupada was giving on Prahlad Maharaj, and this isn't like in reference to your class yesterday where you were talking about Sarvadharma Prachaja, but it came out in the class where Prabhupada said that Krishna, Prabhupada was saying, Krishna thought, well, I came and I gave him the instructions, Sarvadharma Prachaja, but nobody's doing it. The Pandavas did it. Nobody understood it. And Advaita is praying. You came, you taught us Sarvadharma Prachaja, but they're not getting it. So then Prabhupada said, Namo Mahavadanaya, Krishna Prema Padayate, Krishnaya Chaitanya, Namani Guru Devashe Namaha. That Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, the most munificent incarnation, because he's distributing love of God freely. And I heard Prabhupada say, Krishna came 5,000 years ago, and he demanded surrender. But then he went like this, he was looking at Gaurnitai. He said, Gaurnitai have their arms up, and they're saying, come, take shelter of my lotus feet. They're not demanding surrender. They're asking, please just take shelter of me. Because we all need shelter from the storm. We're all looking for something, because we're all constantly in a state of fear and anxiety. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's the hurricane season going to be like? And what's going to happen? And how will I age? What will happen in my old age? Do I have to? So these things are all there, and they're relevant thoughts. But if Masucha in the Bhagavad Gita verse, he's saying, without any anxiety, have no anxiety, be fearless. I will protect you. And same thing with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And just come, take shelter, and then he invests all of his potency in the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare. So this rare human birth, we have come to it. It's like it's winning the lottery, like the roulette world. You look, watching, is it going to come up to my number? Yes, I got it. Oh no, I have to be a demigod. Because a demigod, yeah, that sounds great, but you forget because it's so nice. And it's a long time, and then you have to come back and start all over again, and maybe you come back and it's really hellish on the earth planet. Better to take advantage now. This is such a boon. If I wish that, but I'm not going to second guess. I don't even deserve this, to have this opportunity. And now, finally at the end of my life, I'm trying to take full advantage of it. Because it's true, as Prahlad Maharaj says, you have those first few years playing around as a kid with toys, and then the next 10 years playing around with other kinds of toys. And then, so that's 20 years wasted. Then you become a grahasta, and you're caught up in family affairs, that's another 20, 30 years or whatever. And so then when you finally get to old age, when you have a chance to do it, depending on your health, your mental capacities, your vital energy, they're all impaired. The vital force is weakened. And so it's hard to focus and concentrate. I kept thinking, I've got all these books, I'll be reading them later. First I have to just take care of these bills and so on and so forth. And now that it's here, it's like, I get my 2 hours in, but how much do I actually comprehend is another point. So, anyway, I just think it's, we're very fortunate, and now especially that we're getting a chance, this man wants to donate money to build a temple. Well, that means we have to step up our game. At least that's what I think. If we want Krishna to reciprocate, we need to show that we deserve this opportunity. Okay. Actually, Pankajani was saying, I hope I come back to help with this TOVP.
He said that?
He said something like that,
Oh my God.
He said it a few years prior to that, yeah. He was saying something like, maybe I'll come back and help with this down here. Although when he was asked about Mayapur, how is it you're able to stay here? What's the key? And he just looks at him like, are you kidding me? And then he said, in Mayapur. My wife says she heard him say terrible. The politics of the situation. Everywhere you go, there you are. But then he said, association with pure devotees. And that's when he said the famous quote that Prabhupada said, first of all, Prabhupada gave an order, all his disciples should read 2 hours a day. So if you read Nectar Devotion, you're associating with Rupa Goswami. He didn't say you're associating with me. He said Rupa Goswami. So if we read Prabhupada's books, we are associating with him. He said every one of his purports is an emotional ecstasy. So we get to associate with him. And Prabhupada's introducing us to Srila Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami, Vidura, Maitreya, Supreme Personality of God in his various incarnations. He's introducing us to the whole Narada Muni, all of these great souls. They're all there. You can feel their presence in the room if you really dive in, chanting the Sanskrit and reading the verses out loud. Reading means out loud. That's my idea. It's hard to control the mind.
Yeah.
It means out loud.
Yeah, our whole family takes turns. It really makes a difference. Because
Yeah.
even if no one's in the room, there's somewhere else they can
Yeah.
hear it. We're always out loud now.
Yeah.
It really helps. Even if it's just 10 minutes here and there.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, 2 hours.
So I was wondering because I heard different things. I heard 2 hours, like, class in the morning hour, class in the evening, but also 2 hours of study.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Well, that's my story.
Yeah, I'm always trying to make time.
That's the way I'm.
Because, I have a question and it always comes up and I haven't felt satisfied. But is there ever a time in our life when we can, not do so much physical labor and, become more focused on hearing and chanting if you actually want to do that? I'm told just keep working until you drop.
Well, I find that I'm at that kind of, I would like to do more physically, because I've always was previously, cutting wood, the firewood at Murari, and then I have all these hernias and the botched surgeries, and I physically don't have the same energy that I used to have.
Physically I might still have some energy because, I could get a lot done, but, I could just die of a heart attack suddenly. I want to be prepared. I guess it's good enough just as long as I'm engaged in service somehow.
Well, Krishna, I think, what takes care of us.
Even though I don't have full knowledge, as I'm saying,
Yeah,
full
no.
awareness of.
I know for myself that, first of all, Jayapataka should not have survived what he did. But Krishna was protecting. When it's your time, and for me, they said that I had heart attacks, and I